Today on the LA Food Podcast, I'm your host Lucas Servodio, and it's beginning to feel a lot like the time of the year when the LA Times drops its 101 Best Restaurants list. That's right, dear listener. Bill Addison dropped his much anticipated 101 list on Tuesday, and it set the internet abuzz with thoughts and reactions aplenty. Congratulations to all of the restaurants who made the list. I hope you're all celebrating accordingly. Unlike some of the folks I've been seeing on social media, I'm not going to go postal on this list. After all, UPS has enough to deal with this time of year. I am, however, going to offer some high-level observations and perhaps a couple of nuggets of constructive criticism, because that's just the helpful guy that I am. We're also joined by Father Sal today to talk about the trend of influencer-backed restaurants, and we also break down the latest season of the Great British Bake-Off. Due to a little mix-up, we recorded both of these segments a couple of weeks ago, so if we're still dropping Thanksgiving references, fear not, you've not woken up in your own personal version of Groundhog's Day. We're just not very good at scheduling. The Bake-Off conversation, though, is jolly good fun. We talk about the new host, our fave contestants, and we get into a pretty heated debate about whether this is actually a show about food or if it's really just vibes. Without further ado, ready, set, bake! On Tuesday night at approximately 8 p.m. Pacific, the Los Angeles Times restaurant critic Bill Addison released his much-anticipated annual list of the 101 best restaurants in Los Angeles. This is very much a list that marks a very important marker on Los Angeles' annual culinary calendar. I feel like it is a moment that everybody who watches Los Angeles restaurants really anticipates. In fact, it may be the most important list that is released in Los Angeles. No offense to our friends at Eater or The Infatuation, but I think what really makes this list so important is the fact that it's been going for so long. Like, this list is a direct descendant of the late great Jonathan Gold. I don't really know when it began, but I definitely know he was already doing it when he was at the Los Angeles Weekly, the now defunct Los Angeles Weekly. It's not actually defunct, it just feels like it. Back then, it used to be called the 99, the best 99 restaurants. And then when he went back to the Los Angeles Times, it became the 101 again. So this list has been a mainstay of Los Angeles for a long time. And to get on it, from what I understand, is a true honor for the restaurants. I know that there's been a lot of reaction to this list already on social media. I've seen a lot of people, just celebrating that it's out, a lot of restaurateurs celebrating their inclusion. I've also seen some voices, though, begin to field some criticisms of this particular list. I've seen some people call Bill Addison tasteless. I've seen people take issues with where restaurants are ranked on the list. Obviously, there's people who are mad that certain restaurants were excluded, and there's always people who are going to be annoyed that other certain restaurants have been included when they think they should not have been included. Now, I think it is audaciously ridiculous, bordering on the preposterous, for any of us to sit down and critique a list like this. That's because of who compiled this list. And of course, I'm talking about the Los Angeles Times restaurant critic, Bill Addison. Now, Bill Addison's process for visiting and reviewing restaurants is so above and beyond what most people do who end up criticizing him. It's actually laughable. Like, I don't care how knowledgeable you are or even how deep your experience maybe in the restaurant industry is, or even how detailed your reviews are, whether they're on your Instagram stories or on some blog that you started. I just have a hard time that those people's process for actually studying and analyzing a restaurant is half as thorough, a quarter as thorough, an eighth as thorough as Bill Addison's. I don't have firsthand insight into how Bill goes about reviewing his restaurants. I have heard from a couple people who have, spoken to him or have heard through the grapevine how it works. And from what I understand, it's something like this. Basically, Bill will go to a restaurant like a month or so after it opens and get sort of like a first impression. If the restaurant gives a good enough first impression, then Bill will return to that restaurant a few months later for sort of another shot. I think he probably orders different stuff. He tries to have sort of like a different experience in some way, shape, or form, whether it's like by bringing a different group of people, or kind of like just switching things up, obviously ordering different things. And then if it passes that round, he'll go one final time. And usually if he's going for a third time or even a fourth time sometimes, that means that he is likely going to review the restaurant. I don't know this process, like what that is, it's 100% accurate what I'm saying, but I'm like 99% sure that it's accurate. Okay. So I don't know about you, but I've definitely offered my thoughts on social media about how good or bad a restaurant is when I've only gone one time. I'm ashamed to admit that, honestly. But in this day and age, who really has time to go to a restaurant 3 or 4 times in order to be able to offer their, super highly qualified thoughts? On the flip side, though, it's not really what people expect from, someone like me who's sharing their thoughts about sandwiches on social media. I don't need to go to Bub and Grandma's 3 times to tell you that the roast beef au jus slaps, okay? But Bill Addison, when he says something, it carries a bit of weight because the way that he's actually gone about reviewing this restaurant, it's been super thorough, it's been super analytical. There's a process there, right? So the fact that we have a list that goes to those extents to really like comb through everything in Los Angeles, assess it with such a careful eye, and then it's all in one place, a list of 101 places. I think it's like a beautiful gift that he gives our city every year. It's a beautiful gift that Jonathan Gold gave our city every year before him. And honestly, I just feel grateful when it comes out because, it's really just an opportunity to appreciate meals you've had in the past by reminiscing on them when you see them on the list. But also it sort of shows you how much more you have to eat in this city, because most people, even the best of us, have not eaten at all 101 restaurants. Like, I think if you have eaten at all 101 restaurants, kudos to you. But I think there's one person, and that's probably Bill Addison, right? I bet you other reporters at the Los Angeles Times haven't even eaten at all the restaurants. So that's what I'm gonna start off by saying. Because of how this list is compiled, it's ridiculous for us to even criticize it. That said, I'm going to offer some thoughts because this is a podcast, and what is a podcast for other than offering hot, unsolicited takes? Now, I don't want you to take these as critiques, dear listener. These are very much like constructive criticism, okay? And they're also very high level, okay? First thing I wanted to say is that I think it's kind of silly and kind of reductive to look at this list as a list of the quote unquote best restaurants in Los Angeles. And that's really not a shot at Bill. That's a shot at the haters. The haters look at this list and say, oh, that's the best restaurant in Los Angeles, Cato, which got the #1 spot on the list this year. Oh, that's the best restaurant in Los Angeles. And they just really get hung up on this word best, right? However, I don't think this list is really intended to be a list of like the best restaurants and how we define that word. Bill says it himself. This list is a quote unquote panoramic snapshot capturing an already blurring moment. What this is really an attempt to identify the many little tiles that make up the mosaic that is the Los Angeles food scene in 2023. It's really a list that aims to capture a moment. And I think Bill even emphasized this point in the 2021 list when in his upfront he writes, with apologies to my editors, I don't really believe in the idea of quote unquote bests when it comes to the 101 project. Yes, this is a guide to excellence. It also is meant to capture, as much as a finite number can, the overall breadth and spirit of dining in LA. This list is about the zeitgeist of Los Angeles. It's not about the quote unquote best restaurants necessarily. It's about who is helping to define what dining out and cooking in Los Angeles looks like in 2023. And I think that that's a much more sort of noble pursuit and frankly a much more beautiful list than just some of these like, bullshit lists out there that try to rank like the best fried chicken sandwiches in Los Angeles. And I know that that is ironic because I'm literally on the verge of dropping a list of the best 100 sandwiches in Los Angeles. But you know what? I'm a charlatan too, okay? I'll admit it. Now, with that first thought in mind, that this isn't just a list of the quote unquote best restaurants, I think it's a mistake to rank the restaurants on this list. I believe that ranking gives haters an opportunity to critique Bill. And here's what I mean, right? I think if you look at the lists, the 101 lists from the past, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, and you took an average of who made the top 10 in those last 5 years, I think you would find that the vast majority of those restaurants that make up the top 10 year to year are fine dining establishments. Not necessarily like classically trained French chefs or anything like that, but restaurants that price point wise and dining experience wise would fall at least into the casual fine dining category, and many in the actual, like, $4 signs on open table, like fine ass dining experience category, right? And I think that's what's naturally going to happen when you try to make a list of the best restaurants in Los Angeles and rank them. I think you're going to gravitate towards prizing some of those fine dining establishments over the more sort of casual establishments. And I think that's a problem for Bill because I think it opens him up to a lot of critiques. I think there's a lot of discussion in the food awards industry, for example, about equity. And when we talk about equity, we're not just talking about, racial or cultural diversity. We're also talking about the background of chefs. We're talking about sort of like the price points. We're talking about the types of restaurants. And I think for a long time, there's been this view or this sort of like entrenched perception that the only people who can get these type of accolades, like the 101 or the James Beard Awards or the Michelin Awards, are the white tablecloth, casual fine dining to fine dining restaurants with classically trained chefs in whatever tradition we want to talk about, right? And I think that there is a movement to try to really, really break away from that. For some reason, this list has had a bit of a struggle doing that. I'm going to be honest. I think that because it's ranked, and when you look at which restaurants get in the top 10, I don't think you can really make the case that this list is equitable in that manner. I just don't. And that's not to say that there aren't restaurants on this list that do break the mold and that do advance equity when we talk about it in that sense. But I think it's just really hard to compare restaurants that are not apples to apples. Like, how are you going to go about comparing a Via's Tacos to a Providence? Like, I think when you do that, no matter how good your rubric is, I think you're 9 times out of 10 going to put Providence above a place called Via's Tacos. And look, Providence may very well deserve that, right? But I just think you're never going to break the mold if you're ranking. And by the way, if Bill, and I can understand it too, because let's say Bill did put Via's Tacos, for example, or Tacos Los Cholos over a restaurant like Providence, I think he would probably get lambasted by a lot of the people on social media that already call him tasteless, right? I think the solution here is to go back to the way that Jonathan Gold did when he was at the LA Weekly and the list was 99, where he didn't rank the restaurants. He just released a list. I think sometimes he even released it alphabetically. And just to make it on the list was the honor. Like, why rank them? You know what I mean? Like, being on the list is good enough. I don't think we need the ranking. And by the way, I think the LA Times also didn't rank the restaurants in 2021. I think they didn't do that because it was the first year out of the pandemic, and maybe they felt like, let's not create any sort of hierarchies after everything we've been through. Let's just put people on the list. And I think that's the best way to do it. I think it's the most courageous and frankly correct way to do it. Do I ever think that they will go back to not ranking the lists? No, absolutely not. And here's why. I think they will always keep the list ranked because it makes people angry and drives clicks. It creates conversation, right? It creates conversations like, oh my God, I can't believe that Via's Tacos was placed over Poltergeist, or I can't believe that Cato is the #1 restaurant, or Holbosch is #5. It should be way higher or way lower. And I think that in an industry like the media industry, which unfortunately is pretty dependent financially on clicks, you're gonna want to keep that conversation going. And to foster that conversation, I think you need to instill a little bit of controversy, inject a little bit of controversy into these situations. And keeping the list ranked is one way to do it. Final big picture thought I have on this is, for a couple years now, they've started doing two lists. One is the 101 best restaurant list. The other list is a Hall of Fame list, basically a list of the institutions, if you will, that have been around for a while, that have been very successful, and that deserve to be sort of like honored in some way, shape, or form. These are restaurants like Gela Getza, Golden Deli. The entire Grand Central Market is on there as well. We've got Jar, we've got Jitlada, we've got Kareem's restaurant. It's a list of places that are not on the 101, but still deserve accolades in some way, shape, or form. Now, I think the Hall of Fame is a bit of a cop out. It's a little bit of a cop out. It's an excellent way to give flowers to restaurants that have been around for a long time without pissing them off by leaving them off the 101. And that may not be the case in every single occasion. Like I think there are certain restaurants on that list that could still make the 101, honestly. They're still that good. Like Gilada could still be on the 101, honestly should still be on the 101. And honestly, I think it's a little unfair to a restaurant like Gilada, which would probably rank pretty high on the 101 if you ask me. Honestly, it could be in like the top 10 to 15 on the 101, which would probably give it a little bit more cachet than it currently has just by being on the Hall of Fame. I don't actually know how many people look at the Hall of Fame compared to the 101. But I do think that the Hall of Fame is a little bit of a necessary evil. I just think that, it is in the LA Times' interest to maintain good relationships with these restaurants that are institutions of the Los Angeles scene. I also think that the bonus of having the Hall of Fame list is that it does open up some spots for new entries and restaurants that haven't gotten flowers before. So in that sense, I like it, but I just wish that Bill was forced to rank those restaurants too. Like if we're going to rank them, let's rank them all. You know what I mean? Like, let's see where the chips really fall. And that's how I feel about the Hall of Fame. Okay. Now that we've done big picture thoughts, I'm going to move on to a couple more specific thoughts on the actual list. And I'm not going to go like, place for place, because I think that would be incredibly boring. But a few things did jump out to me, and I just wanted to mention them. First, we have two Evan Funky restaurants on this list. We have Felix, which is like number 50 something or 40 something, and Funky, which is number 20, 25 or something like that. I think this is egregious, and I'll tell you why. First, I think it's pretty well known that a lot of the menu items at Funky are pretty much identical to the menu items at Felix. I think it's like, from what I've heard, it's like a third menu items that you can find at Felix, a third menu items that you can find at Mother Wolf, Evan Funky's other restaurant in Hollywood, and then like a third original dishes or something like that. I feel like you've basically just given two spots to the same restaurant by doing this, and therefore robbing another restaurant of a spot. Like, can't we just like say like Funky Plex or something if we want to recognize Evan Funky and not give him two completely separate awards? I think that's a little overkill. Also, I have my own issues with Evan Funky's restaurants, but I have heard that, Funky has not been that impressive. So I was really surprised to see it put at like spot number 25 or something like that. But I guess Bill's a Funky fan. He's a Funky head. What can I say? My second question is, Holbosch was placed at number 5 on the 101 list. Yet back in like July, it was named the Los Angeles Times Restaurant of the Year. That confused the hell out of me. I mean, if it's the Los Angeles Times Restaurant of the Year, shouldn't it be the number 1 restaurant on this list, at least for 2023? I'm not really sure why it's not. Does that mean that Holbox has had some massive decline over the last 4 or 5 months? Or does it just mean that the 2023 restaurant of the year actually isn't the best restaurant in Los Angeles? It's all very confusing. And I think that's what happens when you start to rank these restaurants and throw out words like quote unquote best. It just is really inconsistent. And it's a reminder that like this, yeah, maybe Bill applies some analytical and thorough thinking to this, but it's not science. It's not science. It's not art. And I would be really interested in hearing from Bill why Holbox isn't number one. Finally, everybody on this podcast who listens to this podcast knows that Father Sal and I are absolute homers for Poltergeist. We love Diego. We love the restaurant. It made the list, but it made the list at number 101. Now, when I first saw this, I was like, is this a joke? You want to tell me that there are 100 better restaurants than Poltergeist in Los Angeles right now, when Poltergeist is literally out there making every single list, like it's making national lists, like it made that Esquire list of best new restaurants in America. I just can't believe that there are 100 better restaurants than Poltergeist in Los Angeles right now. However, I thought about it a little bit more, and I think this is actually the perfect place for Poltergeist and for a guy like Diego, and I'll tell you why. Does the name Brock Purdy ring any bells? So for those who are not sports fans, Brock Purdy is the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, and he was drafted dead last in his NFL draft. And the person that's drafted last, it's kind of an embarrassing thing. You get a jersey that's called that says Mr. Irrelevant on it. I think it's probably better than not getting drafted, but it's kind of a ridiculed position. And being Mr. Irrelevant, I'm not sure how many successful Mr. Irrelevants there have been in the past of the NFL. I'm sure somebody who has more NFL knowledge than me can tell us how well Mr. Irrelevants have fared, but my understanding is that they don't typically fare very well. However, Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant, and he is now the quarterback for one of the best teams in the league, the San Francisco 49ers. And as I understand it, he's also leading the conversation for MVP, most valuable player this year of the entire league. I understand that there are some issues with how we define MVP and whether it's just a glorified quarterback award, yada, yada, yada. But still, to go from being the last person in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, to now being an MVP candidate of a team that's making a tangible run towards the actual championship, I think that's pretty remarkable, and honestly, that's what I view for Diego. I think Diego should wear that badge of being Mr. Irrelevant as a badge of honor, as a fuck you, I'm going to show you, and just take that and move his way up the ranking year to year with whatever projects he's going to do. To be honest, I don't know this for certain, but I don't actually think that this matters that much to the restaurant themselves. I think they're just happy to be on the list. But to me, I don't know. I think this could be like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance when he made up that feud with the Charlotte Hornets player, where he was just like, okay, this guy, he wronged me, and I'm going to show him on the court how it is. And then he just went off on him. And we later found out that story was probably made up in just a way that MJ motivated himself. But honestly, Diego, if I were you, I'd just use this as motivation, my man, straight to the top. Okay. Final thing I want to say about this list specifically is that if we take this list and the rankings as Bible, then according to the list, Bill thinks that Quarter Sheets in Echo Park is the best pizza in Los Angeles. With all due respect, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I love Quarter Sheets. I think Hannah Ziskin's desserts are fantastic. I applaud the fact that they're even doing bar pies right now, which I think shows amazing innovation and frankly, dedication to the craft. But I think just cementing them as best pizza in Los Angeles, I think it's a little bold. I have to admit, I have to go back. I've not been in a while, but to me, there are at least 3 or 4 other contenders. And don't get me wrong, Quarter Sheets is up there. But to me, this says that Bill is at best pizza illiterate. Maybe not pizza illiterate. He's like, 8th grade reading level. You know what I mean? I do remember him like writing an article during the pandemic about how good Elio's wood-fired pizza is, and then they just like disappeared off the face of the planet. Like they still operate, but like nobody ever talks about them. That's always made me a little bit suspicious about Bill's pizza takes. But Quarter Sheets, congratulations to you because you do great work and I do love you. I just think it's interesting. Now, the final thing I will say about this list, and this is for all of the haters, including myself, okay? I think the thing to remember is this list is not about you. It's not about you. It's not, it does, nobody cares what you think, okay? I know that I just spent 20 minutes telling you what I think about this list, but this list is not about you. It's about the wonderful restaurants that make it. It's a huge achievement to them, and I just want to say congratulations to them. And I also think it's really cool that Bill does this. I think it's an amazing thing that we have a critic like Bill Addison in Los Angeles. He's a nationally recognized, award-winning critic, and honestly, if you read his reviews, you understand why. And the fact that he takes the time, or his editors make him take the time to compile this list for us, it's a gift. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and I will be eagerly anticipating next year's list. Now, that's enough about the 101. I think Father Sal would probably want to give his thoughts on it next time he's on the pod. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the trend of influencer and celebrity-owned restaurants in Los Angeles. Welcoming back to the podcast, a man who many are calling an uncultured swine because of his 2023 Spotify Wrapped list. It's Father Sal. Father Sal, how you doing today?
How you doing, man? It's funny. I looked at my Wrapped. My Wrapped this year was weird, man. I gotta tell you. So first of all, the songs I'm not even gonna tell you about, and the artists. It was a strange mix. But moving past that, of course, your allusion is to the fact that the LA Food Pod, on which I featured, was not even in the top 5 most listened to pods for me.
Can you tell us what the top 5 podcasts on your Spotify Wrapped were for our listeners' edification?
Oh, I really did not want to do that. It was the Bill Simmons podcast. Don't judge me, please. It's just entertainment. It was The Rights to Ricky Sanchez. That's a mental health illness. I can't help that. That's a Sixers podcast. It was The Watch. Great pod. Very cultured. Very edifying. It was The Low Post, more basketball, and The Big Picture, another great pod about movies and the movie business. So that, honestly, God, it's accurate. Obviously, I listen to those all the time. And look, here's the thing.
Oh, so now comes the defense of himself.
Yeah. The defense is simply this. I look at that and I'm like, okay. The reason is those are all long, either very long podcasts or podcasts that post at least twice a week or both. So I think the reason they're the top is simply due to length. Also, I got to be honest, man. I stopped listening to our episodes of the pod because I can only take so much of my voice and yours. Let's be honest. When we first started this, I used to listen to ours ad nauseum because I was like, whoa. Daddy's on a podcast. Let's go. And then eventually I got over that. I should start re-listening more.
No, you know what? I think you gave the best reasons out there for why the LA Food Podcast did not make your Spotify Wrapped. But the reason I would have wanted it to not be on your Wrapped is more like you've been studying the competition. You know, you've been studying the Ringer so that we can like learn how to take their lunch, you know? But unfortunately there's no such thing at play, is there?
Well, actually, I mean, look, no, not quite. However, you know how they say like 10,000 hours you become an expert at something? I got my 10,000 hours of Ringer listening, man. I've listened to them a lot, and they actually do inform a lot of what I think makes a successful podcast. Some ideas we have yet to implement and we should do more of. But yeah, no, it's less like studying the competition. I thought you were going to say studying the competition in terms of like other food pods. And I will say, I like followed a bunch of them when we started doing this, so I could literally study the competition and see what we're up against. I can't even bother, man. They're so boring. They're so boring. Wow. We're the best pod. We're the best food pod, except for our friend at Forking Around. Love him.
He doesn't have a podcast, so it's not.
My bad.
Yeah, shots fired at every single other podcast except for the one dude who doesn't actually have a podcast. Understood.
That's right. That's right.
I just wanted to say, dear listener, that Father Sal's views are not representative of the views of the LA Food Podcast as a whole. So that's important to say. Hey, at least your top 5 podcasts weren't like, you know, the Adam Friedland Show or something.
Yeah, as they are for you, I'm sure. Right? We got how long gone up there? Some
Hey,
truly cursed podcasts on that list.
yeah, no, my list was absolutely shambolic, but at least the LA Food Podcast did make an appearance on my top five. Look, I'm not ashamed to say it. Yes, it's one of my top five listen podcasts, but you know what? I feel like I have to listen to it in order to understand how to improve it week to week. And by the way, you will be getting a full list of pointers at the end of the year.
Oh, great. Oh, I'm very much looking forward to that, actually.
Look, enough meta chat about podcasts and our own podcasts. Did you hear the news that pop star Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas, who allegedly is also a pop star, are going to be opening a vegan Italian spot in Silver Lake by the name of Argento? What do you think on this? What do you think about vegan Italian food?
What do I think about vegan? I mean, I think it's doable. I mean, of the cuisines, I think probably Indian and Italian. And Italian might be a surprise there. Indian certainly and Italian might be two of the most doable for vegan, because you can have great vegetarian pastas, and as long as you execute a pasta well, you're like basically rolling. You can do like a bruschetta with no cheese, easy. Like I'm assuming it'll be fine. But I do like that today in our newsy bits we have this theme of kind of influencer or celebrity led restaurants as we get into more and more, and that's a topic area of which this restaurant and others that we'll discuss all fit into. And it's an interesting thing. And I think what will really define the success of this particular restaurant will be captured by an LA Times article we'll discuss today. And that's what I look most forward to, is understanding how much the celebrity influence is really focused on the product versus just the fact that now two couple celebrities have a restaurant.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I'm pretty sure they're taking over a space that was previously a restaurant owned by Moby, who I don't know if we can still classify as a celebrity, but basically there are different spectrums when it comes to celebrity-owned restaurants in LA. For example, there's an excellent vegan restaurant that actually does vegan Italian, come to think of it, in Koreatown called Olivia, and Anderson Paak is behind that. And the food is really good. I think the PR behind it was pretty good at the outset, and it got on some good lists. But whenever I've been recently, it's been pretty empty, and I'm not that, I want it to succeed, but I wouldn't be surprised if I heard in like a year's time that it did not. Based solely on the fact that location, and also I'm not sure that it's a menu that people keep going back for, vegan Italian, unless you're like vegan and or Italian. Now,
Sure.
There are some successful vegan Italian restaurants in Los Angeles. For example, Chef Tara Punzone has Pura Vita in West Hollywood, and they make really good vegan pizzas, really good vegan pastas. Also, the person who's opening this with Billie Eilish is a guy, the guy behind Nick's on Beverly, which is a very good vegan restaurant, sort of in the cool like Grove area, and he makes like Detroit style vegan pizza there, which I had for my pizza journey, and it was actually pretty damn solid. So food wise, I think this thing can, go the distance. The question is, will Billie Eilish and Phineas bring enough of that sort of like hotness to attract people?
No, that's right. I mean, I almost want to save it for the LA Times article part of the agenda, but this is a really, I think, broadly interesting topic because there's so many different ways that a celebrity can engage in a restaurant. Robert De Niro is like a founding partner of Nobu, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know that, but he's just behind it, right? And it wasn't like a marketing stunt. Others, Trejo's Tacos and fucking Mr. Beast has like burgers, right? Where they really, it's less about, I mean, almost the food, although Trejo's Tacos is actually pretty solid, but like where the celebrity put themselves front and center in terms of the marketing of the place. But you see this broad like spectrum of how celebrities and influencers use their platform to support and engage the restaurants that they're trying to start. You made a very key point here. Like, if I was a celebrity making a restaurant, like, well, that's another topic we'll discuss as well. But like, partnering, given that I'm someone who's not familiar with the industry and doesn't do food like as a day to day, partnering with someone who knows what they're doing and partnering with the right person is key. And you mentioned that for the Billie Eilish restaurant. So really, I mean, I'm excited to go deep on this today because I think it is a pretty compelling topic, particularly in the LA landscape.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next one then. But the last thing I'll say about the Billie Eilish one is that the name Argento means silver in Italian. So, Silver Lake, Silver, Argento. We see you. We see what you're doing, Billie Eilish and Phineas. Okay, so staying
I'm
with
all
this
in.
topic, I'm all in. I'm all in. Staying with this topic, this one I found absolutely hilarious. It was Woody Harrelson, Bill Maher, and John McEnroe are opening a quote unquote conscious cocktail bar by the name of Holy Water in near the Grove, actually. I mean, where do we even begin with this one? First of all, what a weird potpourri of angry celebrities.
Right, yeah. That's right, at least from the Bill Maher and John McEnroe perspective. When I first saw that trio, I was like, is this a cursed trio? Or is it like a slay trio, as the kids might say these days? And Bill Maher, for me, is not someone I'm a fan of. But McEnroe and Woody Harrelson are pretty dope. Woody's got his own, Woody's a weird guy. But, I was just rewatching the Hunger Games movies and shit. Woody Harrelson is the man in those movies. I'm a fan. From what I can tell, because this is also right next to Woody's cannabis bar, right, or cannabis outpost.
Yeah.
It seems like a Woody-driven thing, really, and I'm in on Woody. I think he's like an anti-vaxxer or some shit, but what can you do with celebrities these days? And so I'm still confused. And you made a point of this. I'm not clear on what makes it conscious.
Here's what it is.
The conscious part? Okay.
To my understanding, it is the fact that they use reclaimed wood in the bar, and B, the fact that they have 0 proof alcohol versions of their regular cocktails. So basically, if you are a sober person and you want to go enjoy the same cocktail experience as everybody else, you can do that. You just order the 0 proof tequila cocktail, right? So that makes it conscious. I'm not sure this is a label we need on bars, personally. I feel like this is just something bars can do and shut the fuck up about. But interesting marketing. I do think they're just throwing all of the marketing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. It's Woody, it's Bill, it's John, it's conscious, and they'll just be like, hey, maybe one of those will be successful.
The wood used to be wood somewhere else too. How about that? I mean, yeah, that is a little weird. It's just I'm just taking it as a weird marketing push. I don't think this place will be known as a conscious cocktail bar in a week. I mean, by tomorrow. Yeah. I guess cool. They have whatever virgin drinks. Every bar basically does. Good for them. Good for Woody. Whatever.
Yeah. Since you've talked about the LA Times article, let's talk about that next. So, the LA Times put out a very interesting article this week by Tiffany Say on influencer-backed restaurants and whether they're worth the hype. Now, these aren't celebrity-backed restaurants. We're not talking about the Billie Eilishes or the Woody Harrelsons of the world. We're talking about the David Dobrik's of the world, who opened Dobrik's, Dough, bricks, on the Sunset Strip. We're talking about
Didi.
We're probably butchering that pronunciation, but that's a new one. And then Anwar's Kitchen, another one that opened up in the Valley, right? Even Fly by Jing, their new Larchmont location called Sua Superette is being kind of called this because the partner in the venture is some sort of beauty celebrity on Instagram. So basically the premise is are these things actually good, or are they just basically trying to tap into these people's existing audiences to put up a business, basically?
And even though the article does focus on influencers, I think the takeaway of it can be applied to celebrity as well. It's essentially looking at, okay, you're having all these things, and they don't even talk about Mr. Beast Burgers, but that's up there as well. There's a ton of these spots of just some random YouTube celebrity, TikTok celebrity, whatever, starting a restaurant. That's a part of a long tradition of celebrities doing the same. And this article references Ryan Phillippe's restaurant and Ryan Gosling's restaurant and stuff like that as well. Why? Let me start with this. Why do you think famous people want to open restaurants? Why that? It's a famously tough business. But I have a theory on this, so I'm really asking you so I can talk about me. Yeah. But I'm curious what your take is. Why is there a real magnetism, it seems, for restaurants in particular from celebrities?
Okay. I think the first thing that comes to mind is a Childish Gambino line that's why every rapper want to act some and why every actor want to rap some. It's the grass is always greener on the other side. You're doing something for so long. a different kind of venture sounds interesting. I also think that specifically with restaurants, and I think this is honestly, this can be applied to why any rich person puts their money in a restaurant. You know you're not going to make money off of a restaurant in like 90% of the cases. What you're doing is you are putting money into the restaurant for access to that restaurant and for access to the cool hotspot. Like, let's say the investors to Carbone, you know, they're probably not going to get a huge return on their investment compared to other stuff in their stock portfolio. But what they are getting is they can get a table at the hottest restaurant in town anytime they want. And that's it's kind of like the private diners club that we were talking about last week, where people pay $20,000 up front and $10,000 a year just to get access to Carbone. It's like that, but supercharged. And that's why I think rich people do it.
I think that's an interesting take. I think that's true in some cases. I think that's like the Robert De Niro case of Nobu, right? And like in that case, that works. However, if that were true entirely, I feel like the use of putting your own name front and center in the spot wouldn't take as much precedent, right? If it was that, I want my private table, my access to a great spot, what I would do if I was a celebrity is put my dollars down, get the best guy. I wouldn't have to market it. I wouldn't have to make it big, but I would like make the coolest spot like Nobu, and then I'd get my table. However, what these people tend to do is put their names and faces front and center and seem to want to make it part of their brand, right? It's almost a brand exercise. My theory is, so I think you're correct for like a certain part of the spectrum of this, right? I think Gosling is like similar to this, right? Where you go like, oh shit, that guy's behind this? I didn't know that. Yeah. And you might think like, okay, maybe it's because he wants to be able to, you know, really like, you know, have that exclusivity and have that as part of a real portfolio of businesses or whatever it may be. I think two things. I think one, yes, brand play. And I think two, like food is something, and especially going out for food, going to a restaurant, is something that celebrities do a lot. It's something that like it's a pretty universal experience for like whether you're a young, old, whatever, like super famous movie star, YouTube celebrity, going out to eat and experiencing those spaces, right? Great spaces, going to great restaurants that are executed well with great food and great vibes is something that you experience a lot. And I think people often get the idea, as you and I have, but without the resources, that we could do it just as good, if not better, if we had the opportunity, right? I feel like there's a respect for restaurants and like a veneration where celebrities want to be known for being able to create and have their name on or face on a spot that people love. It's like it's like an attention thing as well, right? It's like you came to my spot and had a great experience. I think, right? I'm not trying to, you know, armchair psychologize, but I think that's like a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely part of it for celebrities. I'm thinking of like, you know, Elway steakhouses and like, you know, even what's his face? Shaq has like Big Chicken and stuff. Like it's not just athletes as well. Like I do think
LeBron invested in Blaze. Yeah.
Well, but that's more of an investment because I think it's different to invest in like a chain of restaurants that's expanding quickly, because that I think is an actual business opportunity. And I think LeBron is looking to make an actual return on that. I'm not sure John Elway ever saw a dime off of Elway's, but guess what? He had his name up in lights on those steakhouses and could throw parties till his heart's content. Or Ayesha Curry at her restaurant, you know, in San Francisco. Like she's probably not turning a profit at her, you know, International Fusion restaurant in the financial district of San Francisco, you know?
But I bet she thought she would. I bet they thought they would though, right? Like I bet they wanted to like at least at some level be like, hey, I'm John Elway. I'm gonna put my name on a restaurant. People are gonna come because they love me. And I'm going to be known and make money off of this like particular venture and get the attention and be known as a host. This great, like, you know, you're coming to my celebrity house and it's going to go great. But I'm also guessing John Elway did not put as much attention into the restaurant as needed, as we learned from the Bear. You got to have the blood, sweat, and tears, all that shit to be in on it and make it successful. Guessing he did not do that. And I think all to say, like, the way these different ventures are successful is the way that any business is successful. They just have the initial asset of having a initial marketing push, essentially, like the name and attention and media that can initially be brought in when a thing opens. But then it's all about how they're almost like owners of sports teams, right? Or GMs of sports teams.
Yeah,
where
just like
what
really
really
shitty
matters,
sports teams. Yeah,
exactly. Where like really what matters is like how much do you care about making the right hires, about like putting the customer experience first, and all that. That's what ends up making it, just like any other business, successful. They just have a leg up probably in getting initial investment and attention.
So I think we need to make a distinction, though, between celebrities and influencers, because I think, all of the discussions we've been having for celebrities applies. And I think, we're not usually right about a lot of things that we talk about, but we're probably like 65% right on this one. Now, influencers, that's
for yourself.
different.
I'm often right. I'm mostly right.
Yeah, I'm sure you think that. Now, influencers, this is different because to them, I don't think this is necessarily a vanity play. I don't think it's necessarily just they want a place that they can get access to. You got to remember, like a lot of these influencers, they're still looking for additional revenue streams. They are not set financially. Not all of them, but like for example, the person behind Anwar's Kitchen, he could say like, look, I'm making bank right now. I'm charging $100,000 for an Instagram post from a restaurant, and I'm making plenty of money right now. But I'm sure in their minds they're like, there's no way this can last forever. Like for example, TikTok, right, is already going downhill, and people are reporting that they're getting fewer views on the platform. Brands are sort of starting to get smarter about what they will and won't pay creators. And so I think these people are going like, hey, I need to diversify my revenue streams in order to make this whole to really capitalize off of this following I've built for myself. And what is that following I've built for myself? Well, it's my brand. It's my name. Therefore, I'm opening Anwar's Kitchen, right? And I am the face of this. I think I'm not saying it's a good idea. I think it's the same thing with celebrities where they're like, hey, yeah, I want to do a restaurant. I really like this concept. It seems like fun. And then they get in there and they realize this is way harder than it looks, right? You need the heart, you need the soul. But I think for influencers, I think they're approaching it the same way. They think this can be an additional revenue stream that's more long term for me. Not really realizing maybe in some cases, this is a really 80% of restaurants fail or whatever that statistic is.
I mean, well, I can see where you're going. I mean, that my initial thought was, but restaurants don't make a ton of money. I mean, they got to have some kind of financial advisor being like, this is not a good investment. Revenue stream. I see it more like revenue stream, sure, as in the sense that it's a brand expanding thing, right? Like, you know me from YouTube. Like the people who are online know me from YouTube. I'm going to get into the real world. I'm going to do it via a restaurant. And also Anwar, like there's some places where it makes more sense. Like Anwar's Kitchen, he was like a food influencer to begin with. And people are making his mom's recipes. So there's actually more brand alignment. For others, David Dobrik, or Mr. Beast or whatever, like it seems like a weirder jump. And those are also really rich people. They're successful enough where they don't necessarily need the revenue stream. So it's a brand decision to go into the restaurant business.
Dobrik's is absolutely inexplicable. Is inexplicable.
It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. I don't think.
I think Dobrik's is an outlier because every single other one that you see in this article, I think there are different things going on. Like, for example, one of the really interesting cases that the article brings up is Schwartz and Sandy's, which is a bar that was opened in Franklin Village by Tom Sandoval and Tom Schwartz of Vanderpump Rules on Bravo fame. And basically they're like, the point that they're making with that one is like, when the stars of the people wane or suffer, then the business can suffer too, because, that Tom Sandoval guy got into a huge scandal and basically everybody started boycotting his bar. But those people are just, when you see them on TV, at least, it appears that they're just genuinely passionate about bars and restaurateurs and stuff and restaurants and stuff like that. Like Tom Schwartz's dad owned a bar back in Minnesota or something. So for him, it's like emotional to like open a bar in Los Angeles that's big and flashy and whatnot. It's like carrying on his dad's legacy in some way, shape, or form. Now, so I think some of these people have legit passion behind this too.
I mean, like Dobrik's is unique in terms of the article, but I don't know if it's so unique in terms of where YouTube influencers in particular are trying to go. I think because Dobrik and Mr. Beast in particular, who are like leaders in that particular sector, went into restaurants. I'm guessing. I think there are others who are trying it, and I'm sure others who will try it more because people copy. And I just don't think like it's an weird and interesting choice. And I don't think they are going to be successful or have been successful because the ones that are successful, as the article points out, are the ones where there's a real attempt to like dive in, be authentically like engage and maybe Sandoval and what's his face are, but in a way where they like kind of like, you know, savvy and intelligent about the way they go business, just like anywhere else. I really do think the analogy to like billionaires buying sports teams is kind of accurate, right? And the difference is like you see, I don't know if you follow football that much anymore, my man, but Dave Tepper, billionaire, bought the Carolina Panthers, totally eating shit, like complete. I think tons of billionaires and influencers have an ego that tells them, hey, I've been so successful in this one walk of life, and I have an interest in this other walk of life, and I'm going to be just as successful in it because I'm me, right? And it mostly doesn't work out unless there's like a real humility and commitment to doing it right.
I still think that that's accurate for celebrities in restaurants, but I think the better analogy, if I do say so myself, for influencers is this, right? So in Hollywood, when they're producing films, and I don't know that they're doing this as much anymore, but especially when the whole influencer thing was really blowing up, there started to be a bit of a movement, especially with the streamers, where they were trying to create movies with stars who already had huge followings, basically. People who maybe had never acted before. I'm talking like Addison Rae got her movie on Netflix. King Batch, if you remember him from like Vine, started appearing. He was this huge Vine star who basically started appearing in all these movies, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if David Dobrik has been in a couple movies too that nobody saw, right? But it's because these studio executives were thinking, hey, these people already have millions of people who follow them on their social media channels. If we throw them in a movie, that is a built-in audience. And I think that there are certain restaurateurs, restaurant investor groups who are approaching influencers in the same way, saying, hey, you have a built-in audience. And to me, what I see is a built-in customer base. Let's use your name, let's use your image, and let's put this on this restaurant and on this product. I think we're sort of in the beginning stages of this, and I think we're going to see a lot of them fail. I think this is an attempt that may or may not be successful. My gut is telling me it won't be successful, but to me, that's what's happening.
I mean, you keep making this distinction between influencers and celebrities. I don't think there's a huge one, but the point is well taken though, where
it's money. It comes down to money.
Money and marketing, right? So the point you're making that's well taken is that when these fail, it's typically because it's used as essentially the celebrity and or influencer is used as a marketing stunt rather than it being an attempt at making some actually good film, TV, restaurant, makeup line. I think makeup is another area where this happens a lot, it seems. And when they're successful, it's not because there's some attempt to like, you know, skim off the audience or, you know, temporary or long-term celebrity / influence of the person. And when there's like a real interest in putting the business and the quality of the business and the product first, right? And I think, I mean, and that's just how shit works, right? Like, and it will always work that way.
All right, last question I want to ask you on this before we move on to our main course here. What would an LA Countdown / LA Food Podcast restaurant look like?
Oh my God. Man, I mean, look, we might have different visions. We were two people here. Well, how about this? Well, you are the LA Food Podcast, really. So I'm going to try and channel you instead of putting my own vision.
No, this is even scarier. Yeah, go for it.
I think the tension for that restaurant is going to be this. We like a lot of things. You like a lot of things, right? A broad range. You're eating 100 of 3 different food items already and more to come, right? And yet we also, I think, so I just keep saying, you also enjoy like an intimate and vibey and like, you know, personal environment with great service. I think those two things are in conflict in some way. So, I mean, for some reason, my mind immediately goes to some sort of like complex, like Disney World of restaurants. Is that the idea? And you have like just a bunch of different options of this, like to go explore however you'd like, and you can bar hop or restaurant hop, but in each location have a very unique and personal experience. So that's like just like the Disney fantasy of like an eating experience. So it's not a great answer, but if I were to channel you and like the dream fantasy, that might be what it looks like. I'm more curious what your, I'm sure more, limited vision, more precise vision might be for that kind of restaurant.
Yeah, good to know that your vision for me is like Disneyland for like loser adults, basically.
What loser? That sounds like a dream to me, man.
As I said, loser adults.
Let's not do the math on
that. I honestly think it's probably the same thing, but just like revolving sushi bar version, like revolving sushi bar, except it's like pizzas, burgers, tacos. I'm not sure this would be a very successful restaurant, but if I were to just say like the vibe we've been serving up for the past like 3 years at the LA Countdown, that would be it. So
wait, no, hold on, real quick, because I what it really is. Let's simplify this. It's not one single restaurant, it's an empire. And what you should do is this. After each year of completing the LA Countdown for a particular like cuisine, you develop the ideal restaurant for that cuisine. Bam, pizza,
That's
ideal
good.
restaurant. And then like that's like the standalone. And then next, tacos, then sandwiches, right? So instead of it being like we're trying to do everything at once, it's a network, bro.
That's good. Or it's like 5-star chef where every year the restaurant rotates. And
oh
it's
my
like,
God, I love that.
So like we get like a premier pizza chef to run the premier pizza restaurant after the pizza year. We get the best like taqueria people to do a taco restaurant the second year, and it keeps rotating every year to being like the zenith of one particular concept.
Love it. Solved.
All right. We did it. Okay. All we need now is investors, real estate, and people who actually know what they're doing. Okay. Look, we've talked a lot about entertainment, but when we come back after the break, we'll be talking about one of the biggest entertainment moments in the food calendar. It's the Great British Bake Off. We'll be right back. Today, when you and your significant other are browsing your Netflix to find out what to watch this weekend, you'll see that there is an entire new season of the Great British Bake Off out. In fact, the season has been coming out steadily for like the last 3 or 4 weeks, but today you can see the entirety of the season, including the finale. And we're here today to talk about this show. Father Sal is already shaking his head. Are you not excited for this chat?
I'm shaking my head because the season's been running for 11 weeks.
There's that so many. Makes sense, yeah. That makes sense, yeah. Because I guess if it's 10 episodes and it's one a week, the math adds up that it would be 10 or 11 weeks, not 3 to 4. Okay, thank you for fact checking me live. Okay, look, let's talk about the Great British Bake Off. So this was originally a BBC show. It ran for like 3 or 4 seasons, and it transitioned into Channel 4 after I think 3 or 4 seasons. And for the last like 11 or so series, it's been on Channel 4, which is the same channel that brought us 5-Star Chef, which we absolutely loved and talked about on a previous pod. Let's start with this. Father Sal, had you seen Great British Bake Off before we started watching this series?
Yeah, I had actually watched one full season. I think I can't remember which one it was, like season 7 or something. It had like I watched with my family. I was down in Florida hanging out with the parents and my sister threw on the season. It was an old one already. It wasn't coming out fresh, but I think she said there was like particularly cool people on it. There was some South Asian representation, and we watched it. Wasn't very memorable. I don't remember much of it, but it was a good time to watch with the family. Yeah.
For those who have never seen it, can you give a quick rundown of sort of like what the concept is, how it works?
Yeah, I'll try. So it's basically a group of amateur bakers from England or Great Britain who each week compete to see who the best chef is. The way the show is structured is each episode is titled some like baking institution, pastry or chocolate or cake or whatever. And the show starts with first a signature bake, which is a challenge centered around that episode's title, right? And they each have to do the challenge of the week. financiers for the semifinal, most recent episode of this season, Great British Bake Off. Then they have a second challenge that's called the technical challenge. This is kind of like, testing the fundamental baking skill / instinct of the contestants, and they're given essentially a challenging dish to make, but very limited instruction on how to make it, right? Baking, obviously being a science, not an art, requires a lot of precision and knowledge about how to execute each component of the dish, and they're given like the ingredients and like a sparse list of instructions, but not enough to know how to do it effectively. Then they got to do it. And then they are blind judged on their performance, which is kind of cool. Then the third challenge is called the showstopper. And the showstopper is like a gaudy, like, really presentation-based dish where they're like, hey, you got to make some cool thing that looks like this. They are, of course, still judged on the quality of the bake and the flavor and all that. But really, I think in that particular challenge, presentation is a particular focus. Yeah. So that's the episode each week, and one person is rewarded star baker, one person is eliminated.
I think you did a pretty damn good job. So yeah, I think that the key thing here is every single week is a different week. Like, and the thing is, series to series, I checked, and it does pretty much go in the same order every single series. So week 1 is like always cake week. Week 2 is always bread week, and so on and so forth. The other sort of like key element of this show is the fact that the 2 judges and the 2 hosts are like massive personalities in Great Britain. Like they've taken on a life unto themselves and generate a lot of conversation. The 2 judges are Paul Hollywood, who has been on the show for many, many seasons, I think since the beginning. And he's sort of like, I don't know, the bad boy of baking. Like he's kind of like got these piercing blue eyes and
he's the Tom Colicchio of the show. That's who he is.
Yeah. He's the Tom Colicchio of baking and of the show. And his co-judge, who has been a judge for, I want to say like the last 10 or so series since it moved to Channel 4, is Prue Leith, who I did not know this, but she's like an octogenarian who has an incredible resume. She's like ghost-written recipes for the royal family, which like I have a lot of questions about. Like, why is the royal family writing recipes, and why do they need somebody to ghostwrite them for them? But she's done that. She's gotten a ton of accolades. She's really overqualified, I think, to be on a show judging amateur baking. But she's sort of like the I'm not sure there's a good comp from other cooking shows on. Like there's nobody on Top Chef who's really a Prue.
Yeah, I know. I don't think so. No. Yeah, she is relatively unique. And that's cool.
Yeah. And then the hosts are sort of like the comic relief, right? They do the skits at the beginning. They talk to the contestants to like, provide a bit of entertainment while the bakers are baking. And the 2 hosts this season are Noel Fielding, who's been doing it for a while. He's the guy who's like dressed as a rocker at all times and has like eyeshadow and whatnot, and he's been doing it for a while. He's a stand-up comic, I believe, actually. There's a first-time host this season, Alison Hammond, who's a well-loved presenter in Britain, and she was replacing Matt Lucas, who you might know from Bridesmaids. He's the British comic who, like, the bald comic who's like, I don't really know how else to describe him other than he was in Bridesmaids. Yeah, he was in Bridesmaids and he's bald, and that's about all you need to know. What do you think of the hosts and the judges?
So just of their personalities, not of the judging of the show, I think they actually pretty much hit. I think they're good. So they're not as good as Top Chef, but I think for what the show is, they actually have hit a pretty good mix here. And I know the hosts in particular have changed a bunch over time. There's like a woman named Mary Berry and Sue or something.
No, that was the judge. Mary Berry was the judge.
Mary Berry was the judge. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then Sue was a host, I believe, and then there was Matt Lucas, who like everybody absolutely hated, and that's why they basically fired him and got Alison Hammond in.
Right. Well, I when I watched that season of My Family, it was a different set of hosts that were on the show. I do think they honestly hit pretty regularly. Like Paul Hollywood and Prue, I think as personalities, like are a good presence, and they balance well with Noel and Amanda, right? Is her name? Yeah. And I know
Allison.
Allison, sorry, my bad. But like, and I know Allison's a first time host too, and we've had a lot of conversations about Kristen Kish. I think, hosting the first year of any show is hard, but it's interesting because we talked a little bit when we were talking about the Top Chef host transition with Padma about like, oh, how do you change the, like, might they have gone for a more comedic vibe, a more like relaxed host, blah, blah, blah. And then like, left judging up to Tom, Gale, and someone else or whatever it is. Uh, in this case, I think the two hosts really worked. I think the chemistry between Noel and Allison works already a bit. I think Allison fits the vibe of the show. I think they bounced off Tom and Prue excellently. I know Noel, for example, was also a kind of controversial addition because he was like a bad boy stand-up comic. He looks like Jigsaw from the Saw movies.
He does. He does. That's so accurate.
But he's got like a decent personality and he's funny and it all works. So I think in terms of the leadership of the show in that way, I'm in terms of personality. Again, I'm going to clarify.
Yeah.
Not in terms of actual judging process. It works.
Oh wow. Okay, so you're gonna have issues with the judging. I see. Okay, thank you for that foreshadowing. Well, I used to sort of like roll my eyes at the hosts because their gags are oftentimes really sort of like ham-handed and basic, but they've really grown on me, I have to say. Like you kind of have to like adjust your humor to like Great British Bake Off setting, and once you've done that, you can appreciate it for what it is. It's just like family fun, basically. This season, more than previous ones, they've gotten the tone right, and I think that's largely due to Allison's addition. So I think she's been a great addition. Now, for such a lighthearted show that is about amateur baking, this show has had a pretty serious like series of controversies over the years. They're just things that people really latch onto and take to social media and really just like destroy the people in the show about. So for example, Prue has gotten a bunch of derision, first of all, and a bunch of criticism. So she was criticized by eating disorder charities for her line that she used to use all the time, quote unquote, that's not worth the calories, basically, if something was bad. And eating disorder charities went after her for using that phrase. She also had a mishap one time where she accidentally tweeted out the winner of the Great British Bake Off before it was announced, and people just like totally went after her, saying that she ruined their lives, that this is the one thing they have to look forward to in their life, and she ruined it. She stole their joy. So she's been absolutely just like lambasted for that stuff. And apparently this season, because there was nothing else to complain about because Allison was wildly successful, she's also gotten a lot of criticism online for her wardrobe choices. There was a really funny Eater article about this where they talked about it, and this was my favorite line from the article. The writer goes, "The octogenarian is labeled as outliving her usefulness, and her quote-unquote frumpy dresses get more attention than her accomplishments. Sure, she accessorizes like she raided a kindergarten classroom for discarded art projects, but does that deserve headlines accusing her of wearing ball gags and anal beads around her neck?"
I missed the last line of that. Yeah, so what this is indicative of mainly, broadly, is a toxic fandom, which is always something that should give you pause when it comes to a piece of pop culture content. And I think it is, look, we're going to break down this show bit by bit. The one thing I might give some credence to is the eating disorder thing, but in all honesty, like, that seems more like an eating disorder, like charities being like, we can get some attention by criticizing Prue, let's go. But I mean, look, I don't know. Maybe that message sinks in, the not worth the calories, in a way that's like negative. I'm pretty sure it's pretty clear the context in which he's saying that is criticizing the food, not the actual eating of said food. Like, if something is not worth the calories, that suggests that there are other things that are very much worth the calories. So I don't really know how that lands. This is an undercurrent of people who are too obsessed in unhealthy ways with this show. Like, you don't see this shit with Top Chef. I've been on that Top Chef Reddit, man. You don't see this. You see critique of like Gabe Morales for doing like fucked up shit and people having like legitimately bad personalities and doing bad actions. they don't do stuff like criticize Prue for her outfits. So
Yeah.
critique number one of the show, fandom. Well, not all of it, by the way. I think a lot of people like enjoy it for what it is, but like there clearly is this undercurrent.
Some of the critiques I think are warranted. Like, for example, one of the controversies from last season was that they did this quote unquote Mexican week where they like made tortillas and stuff. And the gags around it were just like really dumb, stupid, kind of racist.
I remember this. Yeah, that's bad. That's not
it
good.
Caused quite a stir. And honestly, I think a lot of that was pinned on Matt Lucas, who was let go from the show because he was in charge of writing a lot of the gags, and a lot of the sort of like worst gags were said by him. That one is more than just toxic fandom, but I agree with you. There's something I think missing in people's lives when they have to take to social media to just like criticize a poor lady for her outfit choices on an amateur baking show
and being ageist, which I would never stand for ageism. That's just like wrong,
It's the one cause you care about, so I think we can agree on that. So what are your thoughts on sort of like the overall stakes and the challenges that happen in the show?
Stakes are fine. Describe the prize. What is the prize for winning Great British Bake Off?
Dude, that's a great question. I should have seen.
I asked you that for a reason, bro. Because no one fucking knows and cares, right?
Wait,
it's not
really?
a show about like. I mean, like I don't know. I mean, they go Google it. I don't know the fucking stakes of the show. They don't. It's not like Top Chef where they open every episode being like, "Here are the stakes. Here's what they're competing for." It's an amateur baking show. The biggest prize is like the positive feedback and ultimate title that the winner gets. But the winner, I'm guessing, on this show barely fucking matters. It's really just about watching people who are just like you, baking in your own kitchen, get feedback from Paul Hollywood and Prue. That's what matters. So the stakes, I think, are completely irrelevant. This is not a stakes show. That's the
you're right. It's not a stakes show, but what you just said is, I think, one of the reasons why the show resonates so much and why I actually appreciate it, which is, like, for example, this season, there's a woman on the show named Christy, who's a stay-at-home mother who says that she doesn't have that much going on in her life besides her children, and that she doesn't have that much to feel proud of or things like that besides her family and her children. I think she frames it as like, I have nothing that's my own. And like baking is like her own thing. And when she gets a handshake from Paul Hollywood, which is like, talk about stakes, that seems to be like the highest prize on Great British Bake Off. It's a handshake from Paul Hollywood. When she gets Star Baker, like you can see how much it moves her. And I think a lot of people that go about their day-to-day lives and don't have things to quote unquote call their own see themselves in people like Christy. And I think that matters, man. I think that connects in a way that Top Chef doesn't.
Right. Yeah, no. Certainly, I mean, and we talked about this when we were designing our ideal food competition show. A competition between amateurs versus a competition between pros is fundamentally different. And I will just be upfront here. I think this is the time. Like,
oh shit.
In terms of a food show, a food show. This is not for me, right? And it's because it's not a food show. This is not a food show. People need to understand that. This is like Make-A-Wish for British people slash like a zoo for Americans to go like gawk at how British people act and like their funny little mannerisms and being cool at each other. This is a vibes show. This is a reality show. It's not a food show. Like, and that's okay. I want to be clear. That's just fine. And it's only for the purposes of this podcast where we talk about food competition shows, where we watched Chefy on whatever the fuck Dave Chang's show was called, where we watched Secret Chef, right? And we watched 5-Star Chef, which is like legitimately great, and Top Chef and did fantasy. Like in the context of our show, like Great British Bake Off does not belong here because it's not a food competition show. It's a vibes show.
That was very much your I'll turn the camera on moment, and I think I know which moment I'm clipping this week. I completely disagree with you. Like I think that Okay, so I think what this fundamentally comes down to is you just don't like or respect baking. Like, I don't think you see baking as cooking or as food, maybe. And so I will say, like, as someone who doesn't have a lot of expertise with baking, I learn so much on this show. I feel like you saying this is not a food show is like you saying watching a cooking show with Jamie Oliver or watching a cooking show with, Rachel Ray or something is not a food show. I think it's actually closer to that than it is to a Top Chef. Because what I'm doing when I'm watching a lot of these Baker's Bake is I'm learning, oh my God, I had no idea. You had to like let the sponge cool down before you roll it up for a Swiss roll. Like the little things that you learn on a show like Jamie Oliver or Rachel Ray are the same things that I pick up on a show like this.
Great point, Luca. How many Swiss rolls have you made since? No, man. Look,
it's not about making. It's about knowledge.
No. Anything gives you knowledge. That's not the bar, right? And I'll give you. And here's a great illustration of this point. The judging on this show, right? They like when you watch judging of Top Chef between Tom, Padma, formerly Gail, and the guest judge, that you actually learn a lot. And you can imagine the eating and the experience of like what the attempt was, what the try was, all this stuff. They go into nuances and failures on all sorts of levels. Yes, we know that cooking the protein correctly and seasoning correctly are key, but there's a whole host of analysis of the decisions. Paul, Hollywood, and Prue only ever say 3 things on this fucking show. They go, it was too dry, or it was perfect, or the flavor really came through, or you don't really get the raspberries. And then the presentation's beautiful, or it's not. Like, it's the same. It's a repetitive show. The judging doesn't matter, right? The input you get. Like, no, it is. No, it is. I promise you it is. You can go through and say, what did they comment on?
So they do say a couple things again and again, and I absolutely agree with you. So they always do say underbaked, overbaked. They do say that a lot. They do say
flavor's there. The flavor's there, but it's just a little dry.
Yeah. Fair enough, but they do say other things. The way that they give that feedback, I think, is helpful. Like, they're saying, look, and they're able to tell just by looking at something how it's been made. They're able to look at a little roll of bread and say, hey, this has been underproofed, or this was overbaked, or the seasoning was off, or did you not add salt? I love those moments when you see like the baker like baking something. I think this happened with Maddie, who's my favorite contestant on the show. He goes, oh, I forgot to add salt. Paul Hollywood, when he's judging it, without even tasting it, just says, you forgot to add salt, didn't you?
It's because baking is paint by numbers. Let me tell you this. Give me 1 week of going to like baking school, baking boot camp. I could judge the way Paul Hollywood and Prue judge. I could judge them tomorrow. I could judge baking like that tomorrow, because baking is a simple science and you can very easily tell the failures. Because cooking is an art that requires decisions and creativity, that requires actual judging of said decisions and of said creativity. But when someone goes, hey, I know that when you don't add salt, the thing looks like this, I could learn that tomorrow, bro. And so the judging, I mean, all to say the judging is not relevant here, right? Like, yes, you do learn stuff. The reason you learn stuff is because at one point in the show for like the technical challenge, they cut to Paul and Prue in a tent describing how to make the actual thing that the contestants are about to make. And they literally say, if they fail, they're going to fail for 1, 2, 3 reasons. And then they go judge the contestants and they go, you failed for reason 1, 2, or 3. Like, it's very simple. It's very simplistic. It's not a food show. It's a vibes show. It's a personality show. And that's fine. But it is what it is.
I think it's a food show. It's just a food show for amateurs. And like most people watching it are amateurs. So it's like, I think it's just maybe for a different audience. But I definitely think it is a food show. Nah. Yes.
No. It's a personality show packaged in a food show. It's like the center of the show is the ganache of the show is just personality and vibes. And it happens to have a little financier around it of food. But the food doesn't matter. By the way, most of the food...
You're proving the point because you've literally learned nothing. The ganache goes on the outside. The financier is on the inside.
No. One of the contestants, I think it was Josh, put ganache on the inside. He did chocolate ganache. I noticed it because it sounded good. Did it look good? It did not. Most of the food on the show looks pretty fucking bad, man. Does not look good. I would not want to eat that shit. Because it's not about the food. It's about people being supportive and nice and being built up, and then the heartbreak of them not making it. That's all fine. That's all fine.
Okay. We're gonna agree to disagree on the food part, but we can agree on the part that this is about the people, this is about the heart. So let's talk quickly about this season. What are your thoughts on the contestants? Were there any that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. So I watched the show episode by episode for a while, and then had to catch up just in literally today on the rest of the episodes. And literally, the contestants I thought that would end up in the semifinals are in the semifinals. Dan and Josh, I think, are the front runners. I'm a little surprised to see Matt there. I mean, he's like the one I'm a little surprised to see there. He like had a bad first episode, but then it like rebounded. Dan to me is like the clear front runner, but Josh could win. There was one contestant though who was like a Bangladeshi woman. I can't remember her name
Saku.
now. Saku, yeah.
And she was Sri Lankan.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, my bad. When I say Bangladeshi, yeah, my bad. Sri Lankan. And, Saku was the biggest. Like she was why I would watch the show. The biggest sweetie, adorable smile, great personality. Such shit at baking, man. She just could not do it. But I was still so in. I was like still so in. I really wanted her to win. She stood out, but otherwise, Dan and the remaining contestants were they're the ones who've been the front runners from the start. I think you can like watch the first episode of the show and be like, yeah, I think I know one of the two people who are going to win this, and that's basically what I did. Dan, I will say really quickly, and I know we have to go soon.
Yeah,
Dan low key seems like he could be a serial killer to me. He's got a little bit. Yeah, he's got a vibe of like skeletons in the closet. I don't love that. I think Josh is my favorite. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the contestants. Happy for them.
I think Maddie is incredible. So he's like a PE teacher who did not expect to get far at all. He's never thought of himself as good at baking. He's very much a bro. He's a West Ham fan. Definitely seems like the kind of guy, we'd want to get a beer with, which is how I judge all my presidents that I vote for, by the way. And he has made it to the final now, and it's really kind of a remarkable thing. And I really want him to win because he's definitely the underdog. But this is why the show is so great. You see some people who you would absolutely not expect stereotypically to be good at baking or to be good at doing like delicate things, and they're doing those delicate things. They're pushing themselves beyond what they believe they can do, and it's a really inspiring thing. I agree with you. Episode 1, I was like, Dan's a problem. Dan's going to make it, and he makes it all the way. I don't know if I agree with the serial killer thing. What I did think, though, is I think there could be something going on between Dan and Christy. I think they're both married, but like, you just saw some like exchanges. I know everybody gets close on this show. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some extracurricular activities happening there.
I mean, look, as I said already, when there's a toxic fandom for a show, when a show tries to be so like overly sweet, there's a dark side. There's a dark side on this show. There's going to be skeletons in the GBBO closet one day, and I won't be surprised to see it. Like Top Chef, it's all out there for you to see. Like it's all like all the dirt, all that, you can see it straight up. This show purports to be the sweetest, most like generous friendship show on television. That's when you get suspicious, bro.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
Well, one moment that broke my heart was Tash, the deaf girl who was on, didn't make it into the final, and I thought she was amazing. But to your point about the dark underbelly, I do think it's kind of funny that like this show is so praised for like diversity, especially like South Asian representation. They had a deaf contestant this time around, and then the 3 finalists, 3 cis white male dudes.
Rugby players, MMA fighters, serial killers. It's the whole gamut of white men up on this show. Yeah.
Look, okay. Let's end with this. Who do you think is going to win?
I actually think so the instinct is Dan. I think it's Josh. I think Josh is going to win. Yeah.
I think you're right. Head says Josh. I think that Dan is he's sort of like the Pep Guardiola of the show.
Yeah.
He always tries to do too much and tinker too much with his formulas, and it ends up biting him in the ass. And I think he's going to do that again in the final. I think Josh is going to take it. Really heartwarming story there with his grandma passing away, and he does everything for his grandma. I don't know. I find it to be heartwarming. You probably just find it to be like suspicious.
Suspicious.
Was Nana even her real name? And I want Maddie to win, though. My heart says Maddie. My heart says Maddie.
The one thing I'll say here is when we did the Top Chef fantasy draft, you foolishly and stupidly decided to make picks based on narrative potential, which does not work for Top Chef because Top Chef is a competition. For Great British Bake Off, it makes more sense. And I'll even tell you this, man. I was reading up on the judging, which we didn't even touch on. You know how they judge the show? Do you have any idea how they make decisions? Tell me.
No. Do you?
I do, because I looked it up. So I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Now, here's what happens. Prue and Paul sit there, and they judge each round 1 through 10. That's apparently what they do, like in the back, like secretly, without anyone noticing. They go here 1 through 10 on the signature, 1 through 10 on technical, 1 through 10 on Superstar Break. And then, if it's too close, Prue said, this is quoted in media, she said, if it's close, we totally give credit for past performance. Like, we give credit for past, like if they work, which is something that Top Chef famously does not do. It's why Brooke Williamson didn't win her first season on the show, right? Because you're supposed to be judged on the performance of the week. And they were like, hey, if it works, whatever. Like if it's close, let's give it to the one that we like. So
they don't say one that we like. They said past performance.
She said one that they like. Go read it, bro.
Okay, well that's okay. If true,
no, that's not what she said. That's not what she said. I mean, she was like the one who'd been performing stronger, essentially, right? Through the season,
to me,
right?
So I'm a Brooke Williamson truther. I think she should have won that, and I think they should have taken into account past performance. So to me, you're only saying what you're telling me sounds like a perfectly rational way to judge the show.
All fine. That's all fine. However, more importantly, because this is not a competition, because it's a vibes show. And because of the narrative arc that they've given Matt to date, from episode 1 where it looked like he was going to get eliminated to now where he's in the finals, I think it's possible he wins because it gives them this underdog, heartwarming narrative. Like, who knows how, unless he really fucks it up, if Matt is at neck and neck with Dan and Josh before the final decision, I'm going to know who won. And it's going to be Matt.
Look, to you, that'll be a travesty of a show that's apparently not about food. To me, that'll keep me believing in the goodness in the world, and that's why I watch the show.
Make-A-Wish Foundation, bro. That's what this is.
Last thing I'm going to say on this is that this show definitely underscored to me why Great Britain will never be a world power again, and that's because there's an episode where they're making like pudding cakes or something like that, and it was a technical, and literally all of the 5 contestants, and this was like quarterfinal or something, they all underbaked them. Like, they just served all of the judges like basically just piles of yellow shit, like literally just like yellow batter, and the judges couldn't even eat it because it was raw, and everybody's attitude was just like, oh well, like that is not the attitude of a world power. I'm just saying.
I thought you were going to say Britain would never be a world power because these contestants seem soft. Soft, bro. I thought you were going to be like, I could take Matt. I could take fucking Josh. They seem soft.
No, I feel like I could take some of them, but I don't know. I'd be afraid to meet Saku in a dark alley.
Hey, who wouldn't be?
Yeah. Look, I'm going to spare the listeners shitty Yelp review of the week this week. I think we've been good boys. It was Thanksgiving.
I've been a good boy. Honestly, I was going to flip it and tell a story about how I was a great boyfriend this weekend. So,
well, nobody wants to hear that. So, Father Sal, I thank you for joining us. And look, we decided not to make a bet on GBBO. We're going to save the food bet for another time. By the way, dear listener, food is the dinner where you have to show up naked for like a prefix dinner in the valley. We're going to save that bet for the future. But I'll be rooting for Maddie. You'll be rooting for the show's cancellation. And I think we can leave it there.
There we go, bud. Good pod.
Thanks for joining, bud.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast. Thanks to our guest, Father Sal, as always, for joining us. And thanks to Bill Addison for just existing. If you like what you heard today, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe. Seriously, those ratings, those reviews, they really help us make our way up the Spotify and Apple charts, so I would be forever grateful to you, dear listener. We'll be back with another epic episode next week, but in the meantime, if you're looking for me, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at the LA Countdown. That's TheLaCountdown. You can also find me on Instagram at LA Food Pod. That's LAFOODPOD.